Get ready because we're going deep on this one. We're diving into some Thanksgiving-related crimes.
Oh, wow.
Ever heard that saying, you can't choose your family?
Of course.
Well, you might feel a little differently after hearing some of these cases.
Oh, okay.
You might be thankful you can at least choose who you eat Thanksgiving dinner with.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's a good point.
We're going to be looking at cases from shocking violence
Right.
to just some bizarre family disputes. We got articles, news reports, court documents, the whole 9 yards here. But let's kick things off with a case that's both captivating and disturbing.
All right, I'm ready.
It's the story of Omaima Nelson.
Okay.
She's an Egyptian-born model who made headlines back in 1991 for a Thanksgiving Day crime. It shocked the nation.
Yeah. This case is more than just a headline, though, right?
Yeah.
It dives into, like, someone's really turbulent past, a troubled relationship, and it raises questions about mental health and extreme violence.
Exactly. So picture this. Omaima is 23 years old, married to Bill Nelson, who's 56. They've only been married for 3 weeks when this all goes down. Omaima's background is really important here. She had a tough childhood in Egypt, including FGM.
Oh, wow.
She moves to the U.S., but she struggles to find stability. Multiple relationships, some legal issues. It seems like she's always searching for something.
Yeah, and even before she met Bill, there were signs, of maybe a volatile personality.
Right.
Accusations of both assault and robbery in prior relationships. Of course, this doesn't excuse anything, but it adds another layer of complexity when we try to understand her actions.
Yeah, like this pattern of instability almost.
Yeah.
Then she meets Bill, who is much older. She claims that he was abusive, but there's no solid evidence to support that. So we're left with this question, right?
Right.
What was the truth about their relationship?
Yeah, it's Thanksgiving Day when everything takes a really horrible turn.
Oh, gosh.
Omaima attacks Bill in their apartment in Costa Mesa. The details are pretty graphic. Sources describe stab wounds, blunt force trauma from an iron, even castration.
It's almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
But it gets even more disturbing, right?
Okay.
She dismembers his body, cooks parts of it,
Oh, my God.
tries to get rid of bone fragments using the garbage disposal. Neighbors said they heard it running for hours.
That's just awful. That level of violence, the things she did after, it just points to, like, premeditation and a psychological state that is really unsettling. Was it rage? Was she desperately trying to hide what she did? Or was it something more calculated?
And that's what's so fascinating about this case. It's like a puzzle, right?
Uh-huh.
Omaima claimed self-defense at her trial.
Oh, okay.
Said Bill was abusive. But the brutality, the things she did afterwards, the jury didn't buy it.
It's interesting, though. She also tried to get someone else to help her dispose of the body. She even offered an ex-boyfriend $75,000 to help her, which is what led to her arrest. Her story kept changing. She even said at one point that a group of intruders killed Bill.
Wow, talk about a wild goose chase. So what happened? What was the outcome of all this?
Well, she was convicted.
Uh-huh.
Second-degree murder back in '93, sentenced to 27 years to life. She's been denied parole multiple times. They consider her too dangerous to be released.
So we have this seemingly glamorous model, but she has this dark past, a whirlwind romance, and then this brutal Thanksgiving Day crime.
Yeah.
It has all the makings of a true crime obsession.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it also makes you think about how easily violence can happen, especially at home. Omaima's case is extreme, but it shows just how volatile any relationship can be.
Yeah, it's a reminder that behind closed doors, anything can happen. And sometimes the truth is darker than we could ever imagine.
Yeah.
But Omaima's story is just the beginning. We've got more cases to unpack. Each one shows a different side of this dark side of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's crazy how different these cases are. From just regular family get-togethers to cases where there's planning and years of resentment. We'll see how a day meant for being thankful can turn into a tragedy.
Okay, I'm both intrigued and a little scared to see what's next. Let's move on, shall we? This next case takes us to South Florida. A Thanksgiving dinner with 16 family members.
It turned into a total nightmare.
This case, this Paul Michael Moorhidge case, it just shows that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones closest to us. And as we'll see, his motive is still a mystery. It's haunting. Back in 2009, Paul Michael Moorhidge sat down with 16 family members for Thanksgiving dinner in Jupiter, Florida. Seems like a pretty normal holiday gathering, all the usual stuff of a big family.
Right.
But things took a really horrible turn that night. Moorhidge just completely calculated, shot and killed 4 relatives.
Oh, God.
His twin sisters, Carla and Lisa.
Wow.
His 6-year-old cousin, Michaela, and his aunt's husband, Raymond Joseph. Lisa was actually pregnant at the time, too.
It's just awful. What's so scary is how planned out it seems.
One source even said, I've waited 20 years to do this.
Yeah.
To think he could just sit there for dinner, planning that out, it's unbelievable.
If that's true, it just shows how much resentment and anger he must have been holding on to for years.
For sure. It really makes you question family, you know? Like even in close families, there can be this hidden darkness.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder what could cause that kind of rage for 2 decades. Was it one specific thing or just years of resentment building up?
Yeah.
Sadly, we don't really know what motivated him. Some people say he had mental health issues. Others point to maybe family conflicts that never got resolved.
Right.
Whatever the reason, it was just devastating. A whole family shattered,
Yeah.
and the community was just in shock.
So what happened after the shooting?
Well, Merhige took off. There was a nationwide manhunt.
Oh, well.
They eventually caught him, and he took a plea deal to avoid the death penalty.
Okay.
7 consecutive life sentences. So he'll spend the rest of his life in prison.
It's hard to imagine the pain those families must feel. The loss, the questions, just the horror of it all.
Absolutely. It's something they'll carry with them forever.
It's a reminder that even in the most normal-seeming places, something terrible can happen so fast. Shows you that even close to home, there's this potential for darkness.
It really highlights how important mental health is.
Yeah.
And being able to communicate in families, in a healthy way. We may never fully understand what drove Merhige, but we can learn from this. Try to build a society that focuses on empathy and understanding and support.
Right. Okay, let's change gears a little bit.
Okay.
This next case isn't as big, but it shows how intense family dynamics can get. It started with an argument about Thanksgiving chores, and it turned deadly.
The Ayala's Clay Oliver case back in '09. It shows how easily things can blow up.
Right.
A disagreement can get out of control so fast, especially with all those family expectations.
In this case, it was literally about a pressure cooker, right? This is Thanksgiving dinner, all that stress that comes with it.
Exactly. Ayalis, he was 76 at the time, gets into this huge argument with his son Keith, who's 49. And what do you think they were fighting about?
Thanksgiving chores.
You got it. Chores.
I think everyone can relate to that a little, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like who's washing dishes, who's carving the turkey. All that stuff can turn into a big deal on Thanksgiving.
For sure. In their case, this fight got so bad that Ayalis's wife asked Keith to leave.
Oh, wow.
Just to calm down. But Keith wouldn't go. The argument just kept escalating.
So how did it turn deadly?
Ayalis, in a moment of anger, went upstairs, got a .357 revolver, and shot Keith.
Oh, my God.
Just a tragic ending to an argument. It shows how quickly tempers can flare and lead to something you can't take back.
It's really disturbing. Even in your own home, during a holiday, things can go bad so suddenly. And in this case, it was a fight about something so many families argue about.
It makes you think about how much pressure there is to make holidays perfect, and how that mixes with family dynamics and individual tempers. It can be a dangerous combination. We need to remember to watch what we say, how we act, especially when we're stressed. And good communication, that's crucial in families.
Okay, before we finish up this part, let's look at a case that brings up some ethical questions.
Okay.
It's about Byron David Smith. On Thanksgiving in 2012, he took things into his own hands after being burglarized multiple times.
This case is all about vigilantism.
Right.
Makes you think about the line between self-defense and, planned violence. It makes us question what we believe about justice. How far would we go to protect ourselves or stuff?
Smith had been robbed a bunch of times at his place in rural Minnesota. He was obviously scared and frustrated, felt like the police weren't doing enough. So he decided to deal with it himself.
He set up security cameras, even made a trap, waited in his basement with a rifle on Thanksgiving. It seems like he wasn't just trying to scare burglars off. He wanted to confront them.
And that's exactly what happened. 2 teenagers, Hale Kiefer, she was 18, and her cousin Nicholas Brady, 17, broke into his house that day.
What's really disturbing is that they didn't have any weapons.
Wow.
Smith shot them both. Multiple times. He recorded the whole thing, even the audio.
That's where things get complicated, right?
Yeah.
Was he right to do that? Was he a victim protecting himself? Or was it murder?
People were really divided. Some said he had every right to defend his property.
Right.
Others said it was wrong to use deadly force against kids who weren't armed. And the fact that he waited a whole day to call the police, said he didn't want to bother them on Thanksgiving, that just made people even more suspicious.
Yeah, that's creepy. Makes it seem like he wasn't really that upset about it.
Exactly. And the recordings, they didn't just capture the shooting, but also what Smith was saying. Really disturbing stuff. He called the teenagers vermin, talked about cleaning up a mess.
Doesn't sound like someone just defending themselves.
Right.
Sounds like he wanted revenge.
In the end, they convicted him of premeditated murder. Life in prison.
Wow.
But people still argue about this case. It makes us think about how far we can go in self-defense and the dangers of taking the law into your own hands. Smith's case shows how that can go really wrong.
It's a story about fear, frustration, and how tempting it can be to just take care of things yourself.
It shows how complicated the legal system is. It's so hard to decide when deadly force is really okay. The Byron David Smith case is like a warning.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even when we want justice, we have to be reasonable, compassionate, and respect human life.
Okay, I think we need something a little lighter after that one.
Yeah, good idea.
Don't worry, we're still on Thanksgiving crime. But this next one is more about sibling rivalry gone wrong. Think Sorks, not guns.
Okay, that sounds a little better.
The Shanika Alsop case from 2012. It proves that even everyday objects can be weapons when families fight. Shows that Thanksgiving can bring out the worst in people, even if it's supposed to be about being thankful.
That's the truth.
This all happened at Alsop's house. Thanksgiving dinner turns into a huge fight, and someone ends up with a pretty weird injury.
A stab wound in the neck from a serving fork.
A serving fork. Sibling rivalry taken to a whole new level. Thankfully, her half-brother survived. Alsop was convicted of assault.
Wow.
It's a strange story, but it shows how anything can become a weapon when people get emotional.
It all goes back to what we've been talking about, right? Thanksgiving is supposed to be all nice and happy, but it can cause conflict.
For sure.
Whether it's old grudges, childhood fights, or just the stress of trying to make everything perfect, it can bring out the worst in us.
Honestly, who hasn't wanted to stab someone with a fork during a family argument?
Yeah.
Just kidding, of course. But these cases, they all show how tense things can get during the holidays.
Exactly. And most of us don't resort to violence, thankfully. But these stories show the darker side of people, that potential for aggression and conflict, even in normal families.
Yeah.
We have to be aware of our emotions, communicate well, and maybe most importantly, choose our Thanksgiving guests carefully.
Well said. I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've seen it all today, from the worst of humanity to a stabbing with a serving fork. It's been quite a journey.
Well, I think it's safe to say we've all learned something new about how crazy Thanksgiving can get, even when it seems like a normal family dinner.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even on a day that's supposed to be about gratitude and togetherness, things can go wrong. These cases are extreme, but they show us how complicated families are and how much pressure there is around holidays.
We saw how past trauma, all those little resentments, and mental health can make things really volatile, especially with the added stress of holidays.
It is interesting how each case shows a different part of that dynamic. Omama Nelson, her case shows how violence can come from a rough past and a bad relationship. And then Palmer Hidge, his story shows how someone can plan something terrible and hide that darkness. The case with Ayalis Clay Oliver. It's scary how a small disagreement can turn deadly, especially with all those family expectations during the holidays. And Byron David Smith, his story makes us think about those tough questions about taking the law into your own hands. Is it ever okay?
And we can't forget Shanika Alsop. She turned Thanksgiving dinner into a scene from a movie, stabbing someone with a serving fork. It just shows that even when things are tragic, there's always something absurd that can happen.
These cases really show us that the holidays, even with all the good stuff, can be a time when people are stressed and vulnerable. It's a time when families are put to the test and old problems come up again.
It's important to remember that most families don't have these kinds of Thanksgiving disasters, but these stories are like a warning. They remind us to be careful, aware, and understanding when we're with family.
So what can our listeners take away from all this? I'm thinking, be open with each other, set boundaries, and maybe don't worry so much about having a perfect Thanksgiving.
Exactly. Talking honestly, dealing with conflicts in a healthy way, and getting professional help if you need it, those are all important. And it's totally fine to skip family gatherings if they're going to be more stressful than fun.
And maybe keep the serving forks out of reach, just in case. Seriously, though, I think this deep dive has been really interesting and makes you think. We've seen a whole other side of Thanksgiving.
It reminds us that even behind the happiest celebrations, there are these real, complicated human stories. Love and loss, joy and sadness, and those strong family ties that can be both good and bad.
I hope everyone listening has enjoyed this deep dive into Thanksgiving crime. It's been a wild one. And if you want more true crime to keep you entertained, there are tons of stories out there just waiting to be discovered.
And as you get together with your loved ones this Thanksgiving, remember to enjoy the time you have, be grateful, and maybe keep an eye on those serving forks. You never know when a family argument might break out.
True crime, no bull.